Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY, Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I'll wait for a couple other people to come up in here. Wait for them to come up in here. Meantime and in between time, let me do it like this.
Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. We got to talk about it because everybody else is talking about it. But she was the one that got away. Did she get paid off? There's a lot of conversation about the one and only. Like I said, we're going to wait for some other people to come up in here. The one and only Gina Hunt. M. Cole, what's good? Thank you for coming through. Appreciate it. Black Cash Dreams, thank you for coming through. We doing the evening shot. Back on the squared up, wear it up. Waiting for some other people to come up in here, ladies and gentlemen. Because we're going to talk about it. They've been mentioning her name in the trial, and she's supposed to be the one that that they couldn't get in contact with her lawyers anymore, or get in contact with her anymore. Black Cash Dreams was good. Actually, I didn't see it. Black Cash Dreams. I actually didn't see it. But more importantly, Gina Hunt, ladies and gentlemen. Is Gina Hunt the one that they were really scared of based on her allegations and what happened to her involving Diddy? I think her situation was a little bit more, I would say more convincing. Even though Cassie was the one who Diddy kind of paraded as his girlfriend, openly in the public, Gina Hunt got pregnant by Diddy twice. And so the way she described what was going on in their relationship, the abuse that she kind of endured, should I say, from Diddy, was a little bit, amid all of the world, the controversy and everything, with his ex-girlfriend, Cassie and all of that, people been speak about Cassie. Somebody's name that keeps coming up in this case, is not on the witness list and has mysteriously disappeared. And she goes by the name of Gina Hunt, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, she had done a few interviews a while back, before all of the Diddy situation had broke out, before Cassie had filed a lawsuit. Gina Hunt had opened up about the mental, physical, and emotional abuse that she endured while in a tumultuous 5-year relationship with Sean P. Diddy Combs, ladies and gentlemen, from 2014 to 2019. Basically talking about how Diddy belittled her and basically compared her to Cassie, if you will. What struck me about this is that, Gina came into the picture after Cassie, as we all know, based on the dates, right? Like I said, the world was unaware about Diddy's abusive thing. Everything was still good. It was brother love. It was all love. It was all of these things, right? and people didn't really know about his disgraceful side. You know what I mean? Like I said, and when a lot of people started talking out, it didn't even get any traction. Like when Gina Hunt started talking out, you know, nobody really paid it any attention, right? When she came forward, you know, with her allegations with Tasha K, right? Nobody really paid attention to it. And as we've gotten to past day 6 of this trial, Gina's name keep popping up. It keeps popping up. It keeps popping up. You know, and they're asking even Cassie's friends, the girl Carrie Morgan, asking her, you know, did you know about Gina? You know, and Kim Porter. Today, another person talked about how Diddy felt about Kim Porter versus Cassie, saying Kim was the guy James saying that Kim was Diddy's queen, was his family in Los Angeles, and he allegedly said that Cassie was here and she could be molded, meaning, you know, I guess molded into his girlfriend or whatever kind of relationship that they had at that time, which basically started off. But the interesting part about the situation with Gina Hunt is this. Gina Hunt met Diddy in February of 2014, right? And Gina Hunt was pregnant by October 2014, right? With the pregnancy, she told him and was like, he said, you're gonna get an abortion, right? And then she said, she was like, I don't know yet. So then he offered me $50,000 to get rid of it. She said, but she turned it down because she loved him. Now, with that right there alone, in a courtroom and dealing with the case that Diddy's dealing with now, that's definitely not a good look, right? I don't know how she disappeared, but to the best of my knowledge, if Diddy offered her $50,000 to get rid of the child and have an abortion, then you gotta know that she got some money not to show up in court. She was victim number 3, as it was told by the judge from that perspective. But now Gina Hunt has somehow, some way disappeared. Nobody's heard from her. I don't think she's doing interviews. You know, for all intents and purposes, she could be in San Tropez. She could be somewhere far, far away from this whole happening thing that's going on right now. Because remember, like every other witness in the case, she was being subpoenaed, right? And so she got ghosts. But she actually achieved the goal that Cassie wanted to achieve, basically having Diddy's kids and so on and so forth. Cassie didn't know about her, and Cassie perceived Gina as a threat. You know what I mean? If you see the screenshot, Gina's a very attractive young lady. I think she Vietnamese or Cambodian, one of the two. And so my thing is, I don't think Diddy wanted to have any kids by anybody other than who he had already had kids by, Misa and Kim Porter. And I think he has a baby by the other young lady. I forgot her name. Sarah or whatever her name is. Sarah Chapman. I believe he has a baby by Sarah Chapman also. So other than the people that he had already had children by, I don't think he really wanted any more kids from all intents and purposes, because he offered the girl Gina Hunt $50,000 to have an abortion. Like I said, but she turned it down because she said she loved him, right? She said, I wanted to prove that I wasn't the girl that was with him just for the money. I mean, in the beginning, like the first 3.5 years, he was really mean. Like the first 3 or 4 months, he was really nice. But then he started being an asshole, right? Talking about Diddy. And so my thing is, I think the testimony by Gina Hunt, because she also made the allegation that Diddy had assaulted her, made her nose bleed, and basically she stated at one time that Diddy had had stomped the baby out of her or something like that while she was pregnant. You know, tried to, terminate the pregnancy by kicking her in her stomach and all of these other things. Now, these are just allegations, right? But I find it very ironic that Gina Hunt is nowhere to be found, and she was on that witness list. And she was offered the 50 to get rid of one of the pregnancies, right? And then, then she got pregnant again. Gina Hunt further admitted that she got pregnant twice by P. Diddy, with P. Diddy's child, and was forced to abort both times, possibly because he was two-timing with her and Cassie Ventura. Thereafter, as Ventura name popped up, and the hosts recalled in 2016 a surveillance footage of P. Diddy physically assaulting her, right? Hunt opened up about the psychological trauma she bore due to the rapper's intense control and emotional manipulation, right? So now, when you're talking about emotional manipulation, Gina Hunt was talking about emotional manipulation would be consistent with what you would call coercion, if you will, what they're trying to prove in this case. Now, one can use different words that they like to use, but when she talks about emotional manipulation, that would be one of the things, right? Like I said, in an interview that's now surfacing amid P. Diddy's mounting legal issues, Gina was talking about her experience with the rapper wasn't just toxic. She said it was traumatic. She didn't just speak her truth. She painted the whole picture with no filters. And during one such heart-wrenching moment, the model broke down recalling how Diddy constantly compared her to Cassie Ventura. Now, to most people, we wouldn't really care about that. Look, Gina and Cassie both had something that a lot of women would love to have, and that is naturally beautiful features. You know what I mean? They're very attractive women. When they walk into a room, they definitely command and demand attention, right? Like I said, a lot of people, when Gina Hunt spoke out, they didn't believe her. It was like, who is this girl? Once again, people equate, who is this girl? Diddy's this big star. And until we're finding out a lot of stuff that we're finding out about Diddy in regards to his drug use, his overdose, rehab, seeing the tape with him beating Cassie, all of these other allegations that Cassie made, him allegedly rubbing, male sex workers' semen on his nipples, and all of these other weird things that, if you told somebody that Diddy did that, right, at one time, they probably wouldn't have believed you, just because of the image that he was portraying in the music industry, right? So, while a lot of people were torn between disbelief and disgust, Gina Hunt's words from 2019 started sounding more like a warning siren that everybody missed at that particular time. During the interview, she opened up and expressed how Diddy often used Cassie Ventura as a measuring stick for beauty, right? And you can see how that would play on her self-confidence, her self-esteem, and all of those things, right? Behavior and even success, while belittling Hunt for not being able to match up to his long-time on and off love interest. So, Diddy was basically comparing them, talking about, probably Cassie can sing and, Gina can't do nothing, and so on and so forth, right? Then she goes into the abuse part. Like she said, he was abusive. Like he was always belittling me, and always he was mentally, emotionally, and physically abusing me. He would say, he would always compare me to Cassie and tell me that I'm the bad one and she's the good one. Most people, like I said, once again, in this situation, when you think about the big picture, you're saying, you can look at Gina, you say, well, she could just leave. Why didn't she just leave him alone? You know what I mean? Why didn't she just go and, find somebody else? I'm sure she could find somebody else. But as we see right now, and you can only surmise as to why Gina didn't come to court, Gina didn't testify. She could say, you know what? I still love Diddy, whatever. I think at this particular point, that's a far-fetched theory, right? I can only think, and, allegedly, she probably got paid. And she just, decided to take the money and not go to court, from that perspective. And, like I say, if Cassie, and you got to understand, these two women were being compared to each other because they were in Diddy's close proximity, considered girlfriends, and in his orbit. Like Gina Hunt, she got pregnant twice. She aborted both kids, right? Basically saying that he paid her $50,000 every time. Instead of, I guess, strapping up or getting her on some kind of birth control, he just was, being who he was and doing what he was doing. And along with her doing the same thing and participating in the behavior, right? So at one point, she said at one point she was breaking out in really bad acne. And he said this a few times to me, like, baby, why don't you go see a doctor or something? I don't date women with bumps on their face. And then he would call me names. Like he would call me a hoe every single day, right? You know what I mean? So once again, you can, and the same pattern, beautiful women, right? Dealing with a rich, successful, publicly known, or should I say worldwide known celebrity, right? From what they're saying, constantly degrading them, physically abusing them, all of this, you would think, why don't you leave him, right? But for some reason, they found it, to their benefit to stay with this guy. You know what I mean? And like I said, you can only think about, look, the money, the lifestyle, the cars, the clothes. You see Gina, she got Gucci this, she got Gucci that. She was doing all of this. She said Diddy was comparing her to Cassie, talking about Cassie could sing. She had talent. You don't do nothing. She's saying that Diddy was calling her a hoe every day and all of these other things, right? What it really displayed to me is Diddy's insecurity. He could cop a girl, but he couldn't keep her. You know what I mean? And the only way that he could keep her is by trying to break her down, right? And destroy her self-image and make her feel less than she actually was prior to meeting him. That seemed to be a tactic of his. You know what I mean? According to what Gina said. So Gina Hunt shared how Diddy would frequently talk about Cassie Ventura in ways that made her feel less than. Hunt mentioned how the relationship always felt like a competition with someone she never signed up to compete with, right? The emotional manipulation just didn't hurt her. It left her so broken that the model tore up while reflecting on, she basically teared up while reflecting on the incidents during the interview. Now while Gina Hunt seemed like the very first woman to speak out against Diddy, she's certainly not the last. Amid the ongoing lawsuit surrounding the rapper and the allegations that have surfaced, Hunt became an unsung whistleblower of the toxicity that many women face with the same man, right? And like I said, and we understand and we know that to be now Cassie Ventura. I think, let me be clear. I think that Cassie was jealous of Gina and really felt some way about that. Not only do I think it, but now we know it because Cassie basically testified to it in court. That when she saw Gina, it kind of broke her down. And so now Diddy's using Cassie to kind of break down Gina but when in fact, Diddy is the one who had the low self-esteem. He was the one who had the problem. He was the one who didn't feel adequate and feel like other than what he had, right? That he couldn't keep a woman like these women, right? Think about it for a minute. Cassie basically said the same thing, that Diddy was doing the same thing. Gina saying the same thing. Both of these women say they were abused by Diddy. Gina says she was compared to Cassie. Now, in doing that, if a man is about who he is, minus the possessions and the financial things that he has or can provide, once again, first and foremost, you're a man. And one does not have to use any kind of manipulation, degradation, or any other kind of tactic, right? To belittle a woman to make her feel inadequate. And it seems to me that's what Diddy was doing, right? But we seen when she disappeared just recently, and this was right before the trial started. So, it was eye-opening to me that all of a sudden victim number 3 is not gonna, and then it comes to find out that it was Gina. And she's, they can't get in touch with a lawyer no more. They can't get in touch with her, right? So what happened? If Diddy offered her $50,000 to get rid of both pregnancies, then you can only know for a fact that she got paid. If Cassie got 20, she had to get 1 million. You know what I mean? And, you know, at this particular time, I think that her story and her saying that Diddy had once, from what she said, had stumped her out, and while she was pregnant. Now, like I said, a lot of you going up in the courtroom and Gina's telling this story hypothetically. She was testifying and they were cross-examining her or doing the direct examination, and she goes up in there with this story. You know what I mean? He's liable to get convicted of just of that period, right? And not only that, you look at the video. So here's another woman who's a pretty woman that this guy consistently continues to abuse these women and have his way. I don't think he could overcome what Gina has to say. I think for the Cassie situation, which is different, and because the Cassie situation is the situation in which they stem the whole lawsuit. And we can see that from what we understand. Basically the same allegations as they walked Cassie through. They walked Cassie through everything that she said. They walked her through the Suge Knight thing. She said that in the civil lawsuit. You know, they walked her through the hotel incident. You know, we know that situation was in the lawsuit before we even got a chance to actually see the tape. So, like I said, once again, you know, with the Gina thing, man, it's like it's kind of sad, because when you think about the big picture, is she helping herself, or does she really care about the other victims or people? You know, because I'm sure when she did Tasha K, she was paid, right? And so that she didn't, you know, now all of a sudden she reneged and coming to court. All of these other women, you know, like today with the girl Dawn Ricard, she didn't do it. The girl Dawn Ricard today, she didn't do herself any good. She filed a civil lawsuit against Diddy talking about forced labor, and they asked her, you know, you filed your lawsuit for forced labor. So what happened basically? And she basically testified on the stand today that she couldn't get no sleep. Like, you couldn't get no sleep, so that's forced labor? No. So I think she really hurt her chances of getting some kind of settlement from Diddy from that perspective. And that lawsuit, once again, has to still be fought in civil court, while she came in to basically double down and triple down as to what she's seen happen to Cassie, right? The young lady, Curry Morgan, same thing. You know, she came in, she basically testified that, you know, she had seen Cassie being violently assaulted by Diddy from that perspective, and that she was also violently assaulted by Diddy with a clothes hanger, right? A wooden clothes hanger, and that Diddy had choked her. Cassie testified in that situation that that her and Diddy paid the girl, who was her best friend, for like 17 years off. And the reason, listen to me, the reason why the girl Carrie said she sued, because she said that when Diddy choked her and hit her with the clothes hanger, that Cassie didn't, you know, support her like she supported Cassie when Diddy was beating on her. You see? So now you go back to the same situation. You got Gina Hunt, you got Cassie. And so 14 to 19 was Gina Hunt, in and around, but what, 2000, 2007, 2008, something like that, when Diddy met Cassie, you know, from that point. And so now you think about the situation with Gina is, I think, her story, and the reason why they had to get her up out there, because her story with that one story in particular about him allegedly, Diddy allegedly kicking her when she was pregnant. I think that story right there would have resonated with too many people. And despite all of what, you know, he thought that they couldn't prove, or the racketeering, or all of those things, like I said, I think if that was led into court, I think that he couldn't survive those. I don't think he could survive that. You know what I mean? What you guys think in the chat, man? Yeah, like I said, you know, a lot of people say they could do bad by themselves. But once again, the guy James, who was Diddy's assistant, right? They're using him, and his testimony is going to continue tomorrow, right? They're using him. Now, he's basically saying that he asked Cassie, this is Diddy's former assistant from I think it was early 2000s, he began to be Diddy's assistant, right? He basically said that he had asked Cassie. They had asked, so they jumped to, they're trying to jump to the crux of what the situation is after he state what he did, how he got the job, and all of that. They try to jump to the information, and they're basically asking him. So he said he asked Cassie. He said, "Why don't you just leave? Why do you stay?" And he allegedly said that Cassie told him, well, Sean controls my life, right? He controls my music. He pays the rent for my apartment. He does all of these things, right? I totally understand that. But ladies and gentlemen, it came a time throughout this relationship in where Cassie knew, right? And her parents knew that Diddy was abusing their child. There comes a point where somebody has to just wake up and say, hey, you know what? I don't care what this is about, music, baby, come on home and you ain't got to go through this, right? There was 3 times. There's been 3 people so far during this case, right? And the girl Carrie was one of them who testified today. She testified that Diddy came knocking on the door with a hammer. He was hammering on the door or whatever, and the police came. So when the police came, basically, they were doing the cross-examination. They said, well, when the police came, what did they ask you? Well, and she said, well, Cassie refused to show the police her ID and didn't want to say anything, right? So this is the same girl, Carrie, that got assaulted by Diddy. So you got to understand, her friend, and so Cassie chose the lifestyle, the money, and all of those things over her own friend who was her friend for 17 years. You got to think about that. Cassie chose the lifestyle over her friend, Carrie Morgan, who was her friend way before she met Diddy, right? When she got assaulted by Diddy, Cassie did not support her, according to Carrie, in the case today. And when Diddy was hammering on the door and doing all this beating and banging on the door, Carrie, what? She supported Cassie, and they asked her, well, what Cassie do when the police came? And why? First they asked her, why did the police come? They said the police came because of the banging. People might have made a noise complaint, right? So the police come and they knock on the door, and she said that Cassie was physically, looking like she had been assaulted, right? And Cassie refused to give the police officers her ID. Now you flip that around on its head. Here comes Carrie's day of being assaulted. Cassie's there. And when it happened to Carrie, Cassie didn't support her at all. So much so that the girl Carrie had to sue Cassie and Diddy. That's crazy. That's crazy. So now you got to understand, it's the lifestyle. It's the money. It's the money. It's got to be. I mean, like I say once again, when you think about the big picture of what's been happening in this case, time after time after time after time, Daniel Phillips, the sex worker guy, and you got to understand this: the only person that ever said that they transferred money to anybody involving any kind of sex act is the Cassie gave the guy Daniel Phillips money. They have not proven yet that anybody else or Diddy gave anybody any kind of money in regards to somebody being paid for sex. The only person they have on record in testifying is Cassie for that. Right? Like I said, we know Diddy's a horrible guy. You know what I mean? We know that he's a woman beater, period. Like I said, he should have been locked up for those situations a long time ago. It should have never gotten to this. And as I just told you just a minute ago, that Curry, the police was at the door. 2016, check it out, after the situation at the Intercontinental Hotel, right? The police came. The police came twice. So the police has been involved in this situation twice, 2 different separate incidents, right? And Cassie, once again, that was in Beverly Hills. And Cassie, once again, refused to tell the police anything. So when people are asking, and it's like I heard Tony Busby said, on Piers Morgan tonight, it's victim bonding. No, it's not. It's not got nothing to do with no victim bonding. It has nothing to do with that. You're dealing with somebody who provided somebody a lifestyle. And we know for a fact that that's true. When Cassie left Diddy and got married to her personal trainer that Diddy paid for, right? Where did Cassie move to? The dude fine didn't have nowhere. Cassie said her and her new husband moved back to Connecticut where her parents lived. That's what she testified to. So we understand now what she was afraid of all along. So she walking the red carpet, being seen in all of these magazines, shot around the world. She had like, Me and You to single out. Boom. She's dating one of the biggest moguls in the music industry. For all outward appearances, it seems like a match made in heaven. Very attractive young lady and all of those things. But behind closed doors, it was hell. Right? And like I said, she wasn't willing to give up that little piece of heaven for the big piece of hell that she was dealing with all of the abuse. You know what I mean? With all of the drug use, with all of those things. So much so, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about it and understand it for really what it was, Cassie was a classic dope fiend. And what I mean by that is she even testified to stealing Diddy's pills. They asked her on the stand, so did you ever steal his drugs without him knowing? She said, yeah. Think about that for a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I want y'all to think about that. Cassie Ventura, as pretty she is, as attractive she is, right? She's out here stealing Sean P. Diddy Combs' pills. And then they asked her, well, when Diddy found out, what did he do? She said he was explosive. Her words exactly. He exploded, right? Because he was also dependent on opioids and other drugs from that perspective, right? And so when you deal with the fact that they want to create, the government basically saying that there's this criminal intent to be a head of an organization. Ladies and gentlemen, if you know anything about, 93, 94, you know that Diddy came through Andre Harrell, Uptown Records, being an A&R, interning and all of those things, right? To only go off and to start his own company, Bad Boy Records. What the government is saying, that he started all of that to run some kind of sex ring. We know that's not true. We know Biggie. We know the Locks. We know Faith Evans. We know 112. We know all of the people that he created, hit records with, and represented. So once again, that argument right there is crazy in itself. Like I said, we know from the tape who Diddy is. We know from what Gina Hunt saying who Diddy is. He's a very insecure individual, despite having all of that. And like I said, two things can be true at the same time, but a lot of people don't understand that, but it can be. So, yeah, absolutely. It's wild. Like I said, but my thing is, I know for a fact from what I understand, and like I said, watching the situation with Gina Hunt, right, is I see why they got her out the way. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, she's not going to testify. She's basically out of the way. And I don't think that she's in any way, shape, or form and in a situation where she could be contacted or to receive any kind of subpoena to be able to tell her to come to court. Because she agreed to testify. Now, once again, why did she agree to testify? Who knows? But you can almost be sure the reason why she didn't testify, like I said, money talk, bullshit walk. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. A lot of times, man, a lot of these beautiful, pretty women, they get in guys' lifestyle. They get in guys' lives and they want to live the lifestyle. There's a certain amount of animosity that comes with that, even from the females that, they dealing with. Because the females then become to think, well, he having sex with me, right? Then they think somehow, some way, they become entitled to the lifestyle that you live, that you work for. We see it happen in marriage all the time where, people get married, they ain't got a prenup, they stay married, they get a divorce, the woman feel like she deserved half the money. You see what I'm saying? So it's not a difference, even from a girlfriend-boyfriend perspective. Psychologically, a lot of these women feel like, you know what? You my boyfriend, you supposed to take care of me, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of women don't think like that. You got a lot of women that got their own careers, got their own money, got all of that. You know what I mean? And I think any woman, once again, when you think about the women that Diddy chose to deal with, right? The Gina Hunts, like, she's a pretty girl. I don't know what she was modeling. I think Cassie was doing the same thing, modeling. You know what I mean? She could sing a little bit, whatever. But Cassie came through with Ryan Leslie. She had a tattoo of Ryan Leslie's name on her body. You know what I mean? So, when she met Diddy, it was like, oh, she signed a bad boy. Oh, it's greener pastures, right? So long, Ryan. I'm over here. I'm a bad girl now. I'm with bad boy. I'm with Diddy. You know what I mean? And then here we go. All into the same thing. Once again, she totally forsake the business aspect of her relationship, and it totally got personal. Is Diddy fully responsible for that? No. There's no manipulation or coercion going on. There's somebody who likes a lifestyle that the guy can provide for them, and that's what they choose to do. They choose to go and want to be a part of that lifestyle. It's just as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. And then when you get into, like I said, the girl Dawn Ricard's testimony, she's testimony. Did you see? I seen him throw a frying pan at her. It hit the wall. He was cooking eggs and all of this. And they basically call Dawn Ricard. They basically call her a liar in court. You know what I mean? And it was so funny because once they did that, she testified from the end of yesterday to today, and afterwards it was like, what was that for? If you listen to it and you followed it, you had to ask yourself, like, hey, you know what was that for? What was that about? And like I said, there's been a whole bunch of allegations. I seen Tony Busby on Piers Morgan tonight, right? And the funny thing about this is, I don't have nothing against Tony Busby, but more importantly, Piers Morgan asked this guy about the Jay-Z Diddy situation and about the case and why the case was dropped, right? And Tony Busby totally obfuscated, man. He didn't answer the question. And guess what? Piers Morgan didn't push it. So for me, when I watched that, I was like, oh, wow. Simply the question, why did you drop the case against Sean P. Diddy Combs and Jay-Z? Right now, you facing a defamation lawsuit, from Jay-Z. Tony Busby and the accuser are facing a defamation lawsuit against Jay. Why did you drop the case? Tony Busby couldn't answer it for what it was. For what it was. Why did you drop the case? Because the case had no merit. It was a lie to begin with. Period. Come on, y'all. You know what I mean? Once again, and I like it was another guy on there. I think he was Suge Knight's old attorney, and he was on Piers Morgan. He was talking about how the stereotypical black male, the mandingo thing, like how they saying Diddy using ketamine and all of these opioids, and he can have sex for 3 days and just keep doing all of those things. Very good point, especially for the things that Cassie had talked about and admitted to in the lawsuit, right? She admitted to paying Daniel Phillips, right? She admitted to wanting to have freak offs. And then when they asked her about the last time when she was with her husband, like I said, she said that Diddy had raped her, and then she said then she went back over his house and then they had sex again. And then while they was having sex, that her now husband was trying to FaceTime her on the phone, and she ignored it. You see what I'm saying? This is somebody who understands exactly what's going on. And now, when they put Cassie up there, I thought it was going to be way more interesting than it actually was. You know what I mean? Like I say, Cassie is a victim. She is a victim of domestic violence. She's a victim of domestic violence, right? Another thing, like I said, even a lot of people have been focusing on the urination aspect of things, right? But the guy, Daniel Phillips, said that Cassie was one of the people that told him to urinate on her. Like I said, people say, well, that came from Diddy. I don't know where it came from. The guy, Daniel Phillips, says, right, that it came from Cassie first. She was the one that told him along with Diddy. So once again, I don't try to formulate things in my brain as to what somebody says and then try to look beyond it and create some kind of other, theory in my head. Say, oh yeah, well, she did that because Diddy told her to do it. I don't know who told her to do it. All I know is the guy who was actually doing what she asked him to do said that she asked him to do it. You see what I'm saying? So if we're to take and see, like in court, this is the thing that really, truly, honestly matters. Not what somebody thinks. Now, jurors can think that way too, but not what somebody thinks from that perspective. So now, the big picture is Gina Hunt, I believe, is Diddy's worst nightmare. And with her out the way, I think that the lawyers, as well as Diddy, as well as his defense team, you know what I mean, for whatever reason, they can't find Gina. Look, some money involved, right? Check it out. She had a lawyer. They can't even get in touch with Gina Hunt's lawyer. The phone number, they call it like, the number you have reached is disconnected. You know what I mean? So, you put 2 and 2. 2 and 2 is always equal 4. And from that perspective, so we say Mo better say Busby a joke. Yeah, like I said once again, Tony Busby's he's a great talker. I like him, and like I said, I think in litigation he's a great lawyer. But when you talk about getting in front of these Second Circuit, federal judges, they not playing no games. You know what I mean? Piers Morgan also asked him about, him filing these cases and basically withdrawing from like 15 of the cases that he had filed in the Southern District of New York because he wasn't able to practice in that district, right? With that being said, once again, Busby obfuscated. Well, that was a sideshow. They filed a complaint against me, but there was a side. No, it wasn't a sideshow. It's real because the judge admonished him, right? And when you do that, no federal judge, judges are lawyers too. And there's a process one must follow. You know what I mean? So when it comes down to Jay-Z's lawyer or Diddy's lawyer, mainly Jay-Z's lawyer, because they was the ones that filed the complaint against Tony Busby not being able to practice in the Southern District. I mean, the Second District, the Southern District, Second District of New York, right? When they did that because Jay-Z's lawyer and they practice in New York, so they know the law. So they did what they had to do. What'd he say? Oh man, you say, who's that? BKNY. What does pretty have to do with it? A lot. Look at the women that Diddy dated. Go look at all of them. All of them are optically pleasing. Very gorgeous, beautiful, naturally beautiful women, right? Oh, it has a lot to do with it. You ain't never seen him date and what would be considered an unattractive woman. Kim Porter, look at her. Kim was a model. Let's be clear. So once again, being pretty has a lot to do with it. If you see most men with success and money and things of that nature, they're always with an attractive woman. Not to say that that means anything more than anybody else or anything else. That does have a lot of, when you think about having kids, like, this woman looked like she has good pedigree and all of the things that, you would want your kids, like I said, once again. I mean, notably so, look at Kim Kardashian and them. Like, they ain't never really had no talent, but all of them attractive. You know what I mean? All of them are attractive, before they start to do all the plastic surgery and stuff like that. Like Kim, very attractive. Khloe, very attractive. Her sister, all of them. They got that pretty gene, their mom. You know what I mean? It's just something about them that is optically pleasing that made, a lot of men desire them. Cassie, the same thing. What, Michael B. Jordan. You know what I mean? Diddy introduced her to Kid Cudi, But like I said, you know, when you talk about the crimes that are being alleged, you know, look at the screen, the shot that I put up for this video. Look at Gina, look at Cassie, right? You know, if you come and you meet a woman like that, if she know her worth and understand what it is from that perspective, like I said, she always usually going to attract the guy with money. That's just how it works. Period. Point blank. And I mean, if anybody telling themselves anything different, then you know, you don't go to them same places. You don't go to them same places that you know that they go to because they know where the guys with the money gonna be at. You know what I mean? And they know that, you know what, you know, I can interview these guys and see who's what and what's what, and you know, and date, you know, yeah, we can go out on a date, blah blah blah, and so on and so forth. So much so that the girl Gina had two abortions for Diddy. She said he paid her $50,000 every time, right? You tell me, you know, usually women wouldn't do that. Like most women would go and hide and have the baby and be like, yeah, I had a baby. You know, but like she said, she was being abused too. Why she didn't go and testify? You know what I mean? You know, if standing up for women and women's rights and, you know, speaking out and so that women don't have to go through it no more and being an example and all of those things, you know, I guess she didn't want to for whatever reason. But like I say, more than anything, it's that money. And it's the money. You know what I mean? It's always been the money. It's always been the money. Dennis Rodman, we got to be honest, who I know personally, you know, wasn't, you know, the most handsomest guy. But Dennis Rodman dated who? Carmen Electra, you know what I mean? You know, Carmen Electra was one of the prettiest women in the world at one time. They had her in the magazines and all of that, right? So understanding what that is and what you attract, you know, that's just the way the game goes. Well, yeah, like I said, BKNY, you can say pretty is just surface thinking, right? But we go by what we see first. We not really trying to, you know, because a lot of the, you know, some of these women open their mouth, you know, that ain't attractive, you know what I mean, or whatever, or is attractive. Like I said, you know, you go by what you see first, right? We're creatures of what we see first, right? Then you can take the time to get to know somebody, right? You know, but like I said, when a woman sees a man like P. Diddy and thinking that, well, girl, he could have any girl he want, but he want me, right? You know, there's something to be said about that. And not only that, you know, he can take you to the Benz dealer and he can put you in the new 500 series. Oh, absolutely. Be it leased under his company, under his name. Yeah, she driving a 5 Series. Then when, you know, other people see her, they might not know who she dating. She just look like she got it going on. You know, that's the name of the game, right? Cassie said it. Did he pay for her car, her apartment, gave her money, all of those things. Now, most women would say, well, that was his girlfriend. He was supposed to do that. Not necessarily. Every woman, so that would be basically boxing every woman in to say, well, you know what? Because she got a boyfriend, he's supposed to be doing all of this for her. No. Some women don't want to live like that. Some women want to get out and have a job and work for themselves. You know, and they get commended too. But if a woman comes in and a guy agrees that, you know what, baby, you ain't got to work. You know what I'm saying? I got you. I got to make enough money that I could take care of you, us, the household. You know, if you want to have kids with her, that's their decision to be able to settle down and live that type of lifestyle, right? But like I said, from whom much is given, much is required. You know? And so, and then not only that, you know, the options that a guy with money has. You've seen it. He was dealing with, look, Cassie knew about Gina. Cassie still was there. They said it in court. She knew about Gina. You knew about Gina, right? You still continue to see Mr. Combs. Yes. Right? So now most, you know, women, you know, some women, shouldn't say most or all, but some women feel like, hey, you know what? I'm done. I ain't dealing with this. I'm not come playing second fiddle, right? But what was Cassie going to mama's house, back to her mama's couch? When she had an apartment in Beverly Hills? Drove around in whatever kind of car she drove around in? had a card or cash and all of those things, she gonna give all of that up. Hey, some people, once again, the individual in the situation, and I'm only saying this because this is how it's playing out before our eyes. Not saying it because I think that it's any kind of way, shape, form, anything different for me or what I feel. No, this is how it's been playing out before our eyes, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, the fact that Gina Hunt is no longer one of the people who are going to testify after the judge basically said that she was one of the people that was supposed to testify, right? I believe that her testimony, out of everybody else's testimony, out of all of these other women, because if you look at the persons who had the closest relationship to Diddy, it was Gina Hunt and it was Cassie, right? The people who, can really tell a story. All of these other people, they were employees, right? They were bystanders. Not to say that they didn't see anything or see any kind of violence or anything like that, because some of them said that they did, right? I think another person, who's going to be, if he going to testify, I don't know if they calling him or trying to subpoena him to testify, is the dude Roger Bond. I think the dude Roger Bond is going to be pivotal also, because Roger Bond testified on Vlad that Cassie would sometimes hit Diddy too. And so when they get into that, if he's one of the people that subpoenaed and called for this case, and he basically, and they go refer to that, you did a popular TV, YouTube channel called Vlad TV, and you stated X, Y, and Z, they can also refer back to that. Like I said, if that's evidence that it's deemed to be permitted in court, right? So like I said, there's certain things that we have yet to see. I believe that the young lady, Dawn Ricard's testimony was useless. You know what I mean? Basically trying to corroborate that Cassie was abused, right? And I think everybody that they're bringing up to testify is not really testifying to anything new, but they're testifying basically to what they saw in reference to Cassie. Cassie is the catalyst that moves this case, that moved the case from being a civil case to a RICO case, sex trafficking, coercion, bribery, and all of these other things that the government is alleged that P. Diddy is involved in. He said, what he say? Rolando say he liked the woman that have their own. Yeah. Also, like you said, who's that? Markeith. Markeith said, yeah, and Cassie had like I said, when they talk about, Cassie being all of this, that Cassie was free to do what she wanted to do. The girl, Carrie Morgan, basically said that Diddy had choked her, and his question to her was, who was Cassie cheating with, right? That's not somebody who worrying about running no RICO ring, no sex operation. He worrying about who she cheating with. That's somebody who loved the girl, who wants to, to be as controlling as he can. And I think one of the things that really hurt Diddy is that all the money that he had and everything that he provided her, right? He couldn't control Cassie. I think that was one of the things that really got under his skin. All of the money that he had and all the success that he had and everything that he did for Cassie, he couldn't control her because she still got out. Like I said, she dated Kid Cudi. She said she slept with an NFL player, whoever that was. She was talking to Michael B. Jordan. You know what I mean? We don't know if Mike, her and Mike had something on the side or not, but that was one of the situations that were brung up in court in regards to that, right? And that was brung up today that Diddy got mad because Cassie was talking to Michael B. Jordan, and Diddy got mad when he seen her talking to him. You know what I mean? And so, as to not know, I guess Diddy and her had this serious of a relationship or whatever have you. Her being a music artist, everybody don't know your, business or personal situation, but that's just the way that it is. Yeah, we not even gonna talk about Reggie the Rat. Reggie the Rat they doing video lives. I mean, they doing voiceover lives now. You know what I mean? There's nothing to really talk about from that perspective. They trying to speak on Snoop and what he said about Suge and, you know, the new song or whatever. Like I said, once again, there was nothing really relevant or substantive about anything that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. had to say. You know what I mean? We found out for ourselves that he was a compulsive liar, and that Gullible John, the guy who over there who facilitated and was complicit in the lies, is now bankrupt, as well as the bomb first the channel. You know what I mean? After talking about other people's business and how they weren't paying taxes, and the fact of the matter is that Gullible John was not the one who was paying his own taxes, right? And so, you know, it's kind of ironic, man, talking about people that worked at Walmart and saying that they were bums. I'm like, dude, you know, the karma come thick though, man. You know what I mean? But we're not going to entertain that anymore. Like I said, that's a non-factor when we're talking about what we're talking about right now. You know what I mean? This Diddy thing is going to get more interesting. Like I said, I can't wait until tomorrow for it to resume and to see what kind of evidence, if any, that they present that will be convincing, or when they get into this alleged criminal element of what they believe to be an organization that was dealing in sex trafficking, coercion, bribery, and all of these other things, like I said, that they said. So it's going to get interesting. But like I said, more importantly, for the people that don't know, the only money that they've got that has been transferred to any kind of sex work or anything like that, Cassie testified early on that she gave the guy Phillips about $3,300 and then she said that she would give him more after they finish. And it is without a doubt, Cassie was complicit in the freak offs, right? Like I said, she said she liked doing the freak offs. And like, you know what I love about the defense mostly is they went back to those old messages. They went back to those old text messages and emails and things like that where they were communicating in real time what the feeling was. Not something that, you know, you get on the stand and somebody gonna change up their story because they don't like you no more. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you and your buddy, y'all, they used to do things and they were complicit in a conspiracy, drug conspiracy, and he got caught. And now all of a sudden they flip him and now he gonna get on the stand and talk about like he never was involved with the situation that y'all was doing. And y'all was both kingpins and doing what y'all was doing at that particular time. It's one of the most disingenuous things that you could possibly ever see, right? So, like I said, Diddy was with it, Cassie was with it, and if they're just basing this situation off of Cassie, I don't think the case is very strong when you think about that. Especially all of the things that Cassie has testified to and has agreed to, and also reading those emails and text messages back to the jury. Another thing, Cassie was the one who had the tapes, these alleged freak-off tapes, right? From what I understand, and I heard from some people, right? From what I understand, those tapes are going to be played when it's Diddy's turn to put on his case, his side of the case, right? They're going to play the tapes. And from what I understand, the tapes show Cassie enjoying it. And like I said, when that comes out, because what the prosecution did was they took snapshots of those videos and showed them to the jurors, right? They took snapshots of the tapes that Cassie saved and had on her audio devices, right? But Diddy's the defense has those tapes. They had to turn them over during discovery. You know, you got to share the information that you plan on presenting in court, right? And Diddy's team said they're going to play the tapes because they want the jury to see and understand that this wasn't something that she didn't like or that she disagreed with. This was something that she enjoyed, as well as Sean P. Diddy Combs enjoyed participating, watching, and the whole 9 yards. So, nah, Gina can't get in trouble for not appearing. Like I said, no, not really. Like I said, once again, it's a subpoena. Now, did they get a chance to subpoena her, or she agreed voluntarily? If she agreed voluntarily, right? No. And she changed her mind, no. If they subpoenaed her, you know what I mean, and she didn't get the subpoena, then no, right? Like I said, but if she ducked the subpoena, I think there is some kind of repercussion, but I don't think they subpoenaed her or got a chance to do it yet. or they might have tried, right? So, you know, tentatively, she might agree to testify, right? And they basically, you know, let's say hypothetically, Diddy people got to her before she got, you know, hey, look, here go the check, we want you to go to get lost, go somewhere, wherever, right? And they tried to subpoena her. They didn't subpoena her, no, and it's done. So, you know, now you got to find out where she at to subpoena her. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's worth it. Her lawyer, who's representing her personally for personal matters or whatever, they couldn't even get in contact with her lawyer anymore. The number was disconnected from what I understand. And so with all of that being said, that tells me somebody got paid. You know what I mean? The lawyer not picking up the phone no more. She's nowhere to be found. And like I said, by a certain time, the judge gave the prosecution up until a certain time to let them know whether victim 3 was going to be able to testify. And what they came up with, they couldn't find her. Now, not to say that she can't pop back up and it not be what, you know, it's supposed to be. At this particular time, no. She's vamoose. She's gone. You know what I mean? So, yeah, hit the like button, man. Hit the share button. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please do, man. Ladies and gentlemen, also, let me show you this. I don't know if you heard about this book right here. I don't know if you heard about this book, Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, when he was at Rikers Island, man, this book by a guy by the name of Donald Richardson. He's no relation to me. But yeah, this book right here is on Amazon, man. Like I said, if you have not heard of it or you have not read it yet, you got to check this book out. I just did an interview on the Art of Dialogue with this guy, right? This is him and Tupac in Rikers Island, as you can see, you know, standing in front of the cell, him and Tupac giving the middle finger up. It's Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur and Rikers Island, man. And like I said, it's a lot of stuff. They also talking about Diddy and the situation and about the quad situation and what Tupac actually relayed to the guy, Donald Richardson, who was, like I said, he held a special job in the jail. You know what I mean? Talks about when Tupac first came in and all of that. Like I said, once again, it's a great book, man. It's a great read. And it was a lot of stuff when I read the book that I didn't know. You know what I mean? And this is the book right here. It's called Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, Rikers Island, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all go pick that up. Check it out on Amazon, man. It's a great book. But like I said, more importantly, tomorrow, I'm going to be right back at you. You know what I mean? Taking you through the steps of everything that's being said on the stand. So y'all come back and tune in tomorrow. I greatly appreciate everybody who up in here right now. I appreciate your time. And thank you once again.